Our living room was growing dim in the failing light. I was trying to read a book, but I couldn't focus. My mind was dwelling on what had been going on over the last few weeks. I could tell something was going on, and I had my suspicions about what it was. It was 7:43 p.m. My wife was sitting on the other couch, texting someone. "The Cromwells are hosting a party this weekend," I say, trying to reconnect with her. She doesn't take her eyes off her phone. "Oh, yeah, Sarah told me about that." The awkward silence stretched on. I looked at my wife, trying to remember who she was. "I thought maybe we could go together," I say. "We haven't gone out in a long time." She looked up at me with a smile, but I could see it was only half-hearted. "Yes, I'd like that, James." Then she stood up abruptly, picking up her purse from the table. "Oh, I forgot. I need to go to the store. We're out of coffee for tomorrow." "I can go," I say, even though I know what she'll say. No, I need to get a couple more things anyway. I'll be right back." She's already on her way out, keys in hand. I hear the front door shut behind her and see her computer left open on the coffee table. I know I shouldn't look, but I can't help myself. The suspicion that has been growing in my mind is too strong. I move over to her side of the couch and lean forward to look at the screen. Her email is open. She must have forgotten to close it. What I see makes my heart stop. The email is between my wife and one of her coworkers named David Cooper. I've met him a couple of times at work parties. He is a tall, handsome guy with a great smile and a firm handshake. The email on the screen reads, "Nice seeing you last night. You felt good in my arms. How about next week? Same time?" My hands were trembling now as I scrolled upward, seeing that there were dozens of messages. They had been meeting for months. "Miss you already," one says. "So excited for Mitchell's IT conference next month. Full weekend to ourselves." I sit back in my chair, thinking. The IT conference. I had told her about it, of course. She had been all for me going, and had even told me it would be a good time for her to catch up on work. Now I realized why. The sound of a car door closing outside made me sit up straight. I went back to my seat and picked up my book again, trying to act as if nothing had happened. A minute later, my wife came in the front door, carrying a small bag of groceries. "They were about to close," she says, placing the bag on the kitchen counter. "But I got there just in time." I watch her as she puts things away that she didn't need to buy, thinking up ways to continue her ruse. "How was work today?" I ask, my voice strained. "Same old stuff," she pauses, and for a moment I think I see a look cross her face, guilt, fear, but it passes. "David and I are on that new campaign with the tech client. Nothing too fun." I nodded, thinking of how many times I'd mentioned that name in the last few months. "I'm gonna hit the hay," I say, getting up. "Big meeting in the morning." "Sounds good." She smiles, a smile she's been practicing for years, a smile I used to find endearing. "I'll be up in a bit. Just gonna catch up on some work emails." I went upstairs and got into bed. She started typing on her laptop again, and I wondered if she was writing to him, making plans, coming up with excuses. After a few minutes thinking about what to do, I decided I needed to act fast. The conference was in 3 weeks. I had that long to get my affairs in order and to figure out how to get out of this situation. But I wasn't going to just walk away without a word, without a plan. No, I needed to collect more evidence. I needed to make sure I had what I needed to prove her infidelity, and to make sure I wasn't left with nothing. I looked over at her as I lay in bed. The woman who I had loved for so long, who I had thought loved me back. How had I been so blind? How had I not seen the signs earlier? I lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling, listening to her type. Eventually, she turned off her laptop and got into bed next to me. I pretended to be asleep, but I was wide awake. As soon as she fell asleep, I got up and went downstairs. I needed to do some more digging. It's 2:17 a.m. I haven't been able to sleep since I found out about her emails 3 days ago. The only sound in the room is the faint hum of my computer. I've been going through everything, trying to piece together the puzzle of my wife's infidelity. I've set up tracking software on all of her devices. I've been able to see her location history, her text messages, her call logs. It's like I'm living in a spy movie, except the only person I'm spying on is the person I love most in the world. Another text message just came through on her phone. I've set up notifications to alert me whenever she gets a message from a number I don't recognize. This one says, "I miss you already. Can't wait to see you again next week for your client meeting." "Nice sales pitch, Elizabeth," I say under my breath, typing this into my notes. I hear a sound from upstairs. Elizabeth turning in bed. I stop what I'm doing and listen, but it doesn't seem like she woke up. She hasn't noticed I've been gone the past few nights. She's too busy to care, I guess. I open up a new tab on my computer and look at the schedule for the conference. I'll be giving a speech titled, Digital Security in an Interconnected World. Sounds like a good speech. Not that I would know. I get a text message from the Cromwells, confirming that we'll be coming to their party tomorrow. I remember how Elizabeth smiled and played the role when we talked about it. Now it's my turn to put on a show for you, I say aloud. I hit print and then quickly silenced it, looking up nervously. A minute later, the pages began to come out, one by one. Credit card statements, phone location data, text messages. I heard a creaking sound from the hallway. Clicking away from the web browser, I brought up a spreadsheet of server maintenance logs. A moment later, my wife came into the room. James, it's the middle of the night, she says in a voice that sounds like fake sympathy. Sorry, I just couldn't sleep. I figured I'd get a head start on the conference presentation. She paused, leaning against the doorframe. You've been spending a lot of time in the basement. Is everything all right? I nodded, trying to hide what I'd just read. I just want everything to be perfect. You're going to be amazing, she says, entering the room. She puts her hand on my shoulder, and I almost want to pull away. But you need some sleep. Coming to bed? In a moment. I just need to wrap up this part. She seems to think about it for a moment, then she smiles and turns around. Please don't take too long. After she leaves the room, I close the door and wait for her to be out of earshot. Then I go back inside and retrieve the pages from the printer, putting them into a manila envelope and slipping that into my laptop bag, in a secret compartment she doesn't know about. I sit down at my computer and send a couple emails, one to my company's legal department, asking to speak with a divorce lawyer about personal matters, and another to a private investigator I was looking into earlier today. Finally, I pull up the phone number for the best divorce lawyer within 100 miles, and I write it down. Looking at the clock, I see it's after 3 a.m. This afternoon, we will be going to the Cromwell's house for their annual get-together. Elizabeth will be there, and maybe David too. He sometimes shows up to those things, since they're a client of the firm. I shudder at the thought of seeing him, but at least it will be one final chance to catch them in the act. I close the computer and put everything back just the way it had been, leaving no trace I was ever in there. As I walk down the hallway, I see my reflection on the glass of one of the windows and stop, looking at myself. I don't look the same. I look older, more cynical. I look like a man who's been through some shit and seen the other side. But I'm not through it yet, am I? I go upstairs and lay down in bed, careful not to wake Elizabeth. She's still sleeping, facing away from me. I lay down next to her, not touching her, just like she prefers. As I stare at the ceiling, I think about what I need to do over the next few weeks. I need to pretend like nothing ever happened. I need to pretend like I'm still the same man I was yesterday. I need to pretend like I'm still in love with her. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. As I close my eyes, I think about the conference coming up in 3 weeks. Elizabeth and David will be looking forward to it, thinking it will be a chance for them to spend a romantic weekend together. Little do they know, I have other plans for them. I smile to myself in the darkness, feeling a sense of satisfaction. Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say. I'm about to prove that. I was making coffee in the kitchen that morning. My phone was propped up against the coffee maker, and despite the fact that it looked like I was looking at my email, I was actually scanning Elizabeth's phone on our network with a little program I had cooked up in my spare time. Elizabeth came downstairs a few minutes later, and I looked up to see her perfectly made-up face. "That smells good," she says, coming over to peck me on the cheek. I pour her coffee from the pot and give it to her in her favorite mug. "I made you your favorite coffee this morning," I say, smiling at him. Another email popped up on my phone and I realized it was from David. "Where are you going for lunch today?" I ask, knowing she's got a client meeting at the Grove. She put cream in her coffee and stirred it. "Just a working lunch with the team. That tech campaign is really keeping us busy." I nodded and took another sip. In my laptop bag by the door were the receipts from her last 3 working lunches at the Grove. "I gotta go," she tells me, picking up her stuff. "Remember the Cromwells tonight?" "Yep, I'll be there." 3 minutes after she leaves, I walk into my home office and start tracking Elizabeth's phone activity. I have a keylogger installed on her phone so I can see everything she types and does. I write it all down in a document. A few minutes later, she connects to the Wi-Fi at a coffee shop close to David's apartment. My phone rings. It's Sarah Cromwell. "Hey James, I got you." "Sarah, hello. Are you and Elizabeth still coming by tonight? David may be there too. You remember him from Elizabeth's work parties, right?" I clenched my jaw. "Yeah, we've met." "Oh, it's great. He's a nice guy. And just between us," she leans in and whispers, "I think he and Elizabeth might have a little thing going on at these parties. Sarah must know, or at least suspect. How many others have figured it out while I've remained oblivious?" "Really?" I reply, keeping my tone light and businesslike. "I didn't see anything." "Oh, it was probably just a friendly thing," Sarah responds, backtracking. "Anyway, looking forward to seeing you two tonight." I hung up and sat back, contemplating this new piece of information. I looked at my screens and saw a text message sent by Elizabeth to David. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Be careful, though. James will be there." I opened my evidence folder and created a new folder inside of it. I named it Other People in the Know and added a note about Sarah's phone call with Elizabeth. I needed to document everything. My phone pinged again. One of the security cameras at home had picked up movement. I saw the neighbor's teenage son walk past our house. He held up his phone and pointed it at our house. I had seen him do that several times this past week. I went back and looked at the footage from the other times, and every time he had his phone held up, Elizabeth was visible in the windows. I downloaded the footage and added it to my collection. Just another piece of the puzzle. I received a call on my work phone. There was an IT emergency at the office, and they needed my help. I gathered my things and prepared to leave. "Okay, James, time to go be James," I say aloud. The rest of the day I spend working. In between tasks, I keep an eye on the information coming in from Elizabeth's phone. She has lunch with David, buys a new dress, and sends him a few text messages to coordinate their meeting tonight. When I come home from work, I get dressed for the Cromwell's dinner party. Elizabeth is already home. "Hey, how was your day?" she says. I adjusted my tie in the mirror and saw her reflection in the background. She had changed into a new blue dress. "Productive," I say. "How was yours?" "Meetings, client calls," she says, reapplying her lipstick. "All that fun stuff." We drove to the Cromwell's house in silence. I couldn't help but wonder what Elizabeth was thinking about. David, maybe? And their conversations tonight? I planned to record them. Sarah welcomed us at the door and had a strange look on her face when she saw us together. The house was packed with people I knew. "James, Elizabeth!" David calls out to us. He approaches with a glass of champagne, looking relaxed and self-assured. I watch their greeting, seeing the little signs, the eye contact, the way her hand touches his as she takes the drink. "How are you coming along with your conference?" David asks me, still smiling. "I'm right on track," I say, reminding myself that I have proof in my encrypted cloud storage. I'm especially excited for my talk on cyber safety and monitoring. I notice a slight hesitation in her voice, a tiny crack in his perfect facade. It's subtle, but it's there. If I had any doubts before, they are gone now. The rest of the evening goes as planned. I play the role of the loving husband, keeping an ear out for any conversations between Elizabeth and David. I manage to record a few snippets of their hushed conversations when they think no one is listening. More evidence for my growing collection. As the night comes to an end, Sarah approaches me. "James, if you ever want to talk, I'm here for you." I smile politely and reassure her that everything is fine. She's not convinced, but she doesn't push the issue. Another note for my file. Sarah Cromwell, potential witness. I watch Elizabeth say goodbye to David. They exchange a few words, but nothing incriminating. On the way home, Elizabeth talks about the party, about Sarah's new garden, about anything and everything except for the elephant in the room. I respond appropriately, keeping up appearances, but my mind is already racing with thoughts of the next steps in my plan. I'm getting closer. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting better at this. Later that night, I review the recordings I made at the party. It's mostly just small talk, but there are a few moments that might be useful in the future. I check Elizabeth's emails. Nothing new, except for a message from David. "You looked beautiful tonight. Can't wait to see you at the conference." I save the email and add it to my growing collection of evidence. 2 more weeks until the conference. 2 more weeks until I can finally confront her with the truth. I go to bed, feeling restless but determined. The clock ticks slowly, each passing minute bringing me closer to the inevitable confrontation. I toss and turn, unable to sleep. Elizabeth sleeps soundly next to me, blissfully unaware of what I've discovered. At 5 a.m., I give up on trying to rest. I get up, take a shower, and leave a note for Elizabeth explaining that I have an early meeting with a client. I drive across town to Morris and Associates, my laptop bag filled with evidence. It was early in the morning as I parked my car in the parking lot behind Morris and Associates law offices. The law firm was located in an unassuming building in the commercial district of the city. I had asked for a meeting before office hours, and they had agreed to meet me at 7:15 a.m., 45 minutes before they opened their doors to clients. I had brought my laptop with me, along with all the evidence I had compiled over the past few weeks. As I got out of the car, I saw a man in a suit approaching me from the entrance of the building. "Mr. Mitchell?" He extends his hand. "Right this way." The inside of the building doesn't match the outside. It looks more like a lawyer's office, with wood paneling and leather books and framed diplomas on the walls. He takes me to a small meeting room off the main hallway. "Coffee," he says, shutting the door behind me. "Sure, black." When he left, I opened up my laptop and began going over some of the documents I had taken from the police station. There was a lot of information to sift through, including location data, credit card statements, photographs, and more. He came back eventually with 2 cups of coffee. "So," he says as he leans back in his chair, "what do you have for me?" I pulled up my main file. 3 months worth of sessions, dates, locations, photos from social media, texts, emails, and all of it legally acquired through shared cloud storage and Wi-Fi packet capture. Morris nodded, looking at an incriminating email chain. "Yeah, you did a great job online, IT guy, right? But did you get any money?" I slid a USB drive across to him. "Full rundown of our shared accounts, credit cards, and investment accounts. I've marked where I think the issues are." He plugged it into the computer and began to look through the files. The shopping trips to Hamilton Plaza on the weekends? No shopping bags, just hotel receipts, room charges, billed to her company's business account. Morris smiled slightly and leaned back. "You've done most of my job for me, Mr. Mitchell, but you want me to protect your assets, right?" I took out another folder. "I've already started transferring money from our shared accounts to individual accounts, keeping it all above board. Most of our investments are registered to me because of the initial capital from my family." "Good," he replies, jotting it all down. "And the house? I bought it prior to the marriage. It's in my name. And Elizabeth's income? She makes good money, but I make more. She'll probably seek spousal support to maintain her standard of living." He rifled through more papers. "We just need to prove she used company money to fund the affair. That won't sit well with her employers." My phone told me Elizabeth had arrived at work. "Oh, and speaking of dates," I say, opening up a calendar, "there's an IT conference in 2 weeks. They're going to use that weekend for a longer get-together." His eyebrows went up. "Are you sure?" I listened to another recording from the party. It sounds as if it's from near the coat check, and I'm hearing Elizabeth speaking with David. "Hard to read that any other way?" I say as the tape finishes. "Yes, it is." Morris sits up. "Mr. Mitchell, you've assembled a very compelling argument. But my question is, what exactly are you hoping to get out of this?" I thought about the answer for a few moments. I don't want to drag this out. I don't want to go to court. I just want it to be over. Why during the conference? So they can't get away. So they can't hide from it. So they're both there when it happens. Morris nodded approvingly. Strategic, dispassionate. I like it. Now, what are you thinking for the first filing? The next hour is a bit of a blur. Morris explains how he could build a case that would undermine any defense Elizabeth could muster. "Hey, one last question," I tell him, before we end the call. "I need the paperwork submitted at just the right time during the conference. I'll have a man standing by. Just say the word, and it'll be done." I got up to leave. "Mr. Mitchell," Morris says as I'm about to leave, "people who are this methodical with their revenge, in my experience, often have one last trick up their sleeve, something intimate." I turned around and looked at him. "My seminar at the conference, it's on digital security and surveillance, and I'll be including some very interesting case studies." He smiles knowingly. "Anything goes, just don't break the law, Mr. Mitchell." It was full daylight when I left through the side door, my shadow stretching out long in front of me in the parking lot. I was just about to get in my car when I got a text from Elizabeth. "Bye, babe. Have a good day at work." I put the phone away without answering. Now I had everything I needed. Just 2 weeks to go. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I went back to work after seeing Morris in the morning. I had a few meetings, prepared for a conference, and grabbed a sandwich for lunch. Then at the end of the day, I went home. It was one of those days that felt like they lasted forever, but when I looked back at it, it was like I had just woken up. I don't even remember the drive home. My mind was too busy going over the day's events to worry about driving, and I was on autopilot the entire way. At 6:45 p.m., I pulled into the driveway. My wife's car was already parked there. The kitchen light was on, and I walked inside to find my wife cooking dinner. "Welcome back," she beams as she turns around to greet me. "I figured I'd make your favorite." "That's nice of you," I say, placing my laptop bag on the floor. "What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to cook for my husband?" I asked her, watching her as she stirred the sauce. "Hey, babe, how was work?" "Successful. We closed that tech account I was talking about." I pour myself a glass of wine. Of course, I knew what kind of productive meeting he was referring to. "David's game?" "Yeah," she nods, tossing some basil into the pot. "Everyone's been pulling a lot of overtime." "Yeah, I guess all that extra time working," I say, taking a sip. "You were home late last Thursday, too. I think it was after 9. She hesitated for a second, then said, "Oh, right. I forgot we went out to eat." I sat down at the table. "Vincenzo's?" "Yeah, that's it." "Huh. I drove by there Thursday night at 8. It was closed. They were having that whole pipe issue last week." The sound of a wooden spoon falls on the floor, but Elizabeth quickly picks it up again. "Vincenzo's? Sorry, I meant Giuseppe's. I always get those Italian places mixed up." I drank some more wine, taking another sip. "Giuseppe's is on the other side of town from your office. That's a long way to go for a client dinner." "The client chose the venue," she says, her voice rising just a little bit. "Can you set the table?" I stood up and began to set the table for dinner. My wife was looking more and more upset with every question I asked her, like she was a sweater coming unraveled, thread by thread. She changed the subject during dinner, talking about the neighbors, my work, and other random things. She kept bringing up David too, like she was trying to make it seem as if he was in her thoughts. "The pasta is delicious," I say, taking another bite. "Brings me back to that cooking class we took last year. What was the name of that couple we sat next to? I can't remember his name." "Mark," Elizabeth says abruptly. "Mark and Jennifer." "Right," I say, knowing full well his name was Steve and her name was Amanda. Another inconsistency to add to my list. "They were in marketing as well, right?" "I think so. I don't know. It's been a while." I grabbed the wine. "Speaking of marketing, how's that campaign going for the new client?" "Good. She hesitates, struggling to recall the story she'd told me earlier. "We're wrapping up the digital strategy this week." "Sounds like a lot of work. I saw you had lunch at the Grove again today." Elizabeth froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. "How did you—" "Sarah told me you were at the office when I asked about the party." An easy excuse for my spying. "Did she?" "Oh yeah, just a quick meeting." "With everyone?" "Just David, to discuss work stuff." I took a bite of pasta, letting the lull in conversation linger, and she picked up with her story about the campaign again, although this time it was slightly different. "Hey, that conference is just around the corner," I say, after she's talked herself out. "Are you sure you don't want to come?" She looked away. "I would, but with this new account?" "Sure, finish your job." The remainder of dinner is a delicate dance of probing questions and careful answers, each one revealing a little more of the truth I am seeking to uncover. Later, Elizabeth goes to her computer, likely to speak with David, and I head to my office. I download all of the data from the day and add notes about our dinner conversation. A few minutes later, I get a notification on my computer that Elizabeth has sent a text message to David. He's asking questions, getting suspicious. We need to be more careful. I add that to the file. Let them be more careful. It's too late. As the evening turns to night, Elizabeth tells me she's going to bed. I tell her I'll be up in a bit. I spend the rest of the night continuing to document everything, taking notes and making plans for what I will do next. Tomorrow I will have more questions, more lies, more evidence, and in a few days I will leave for the conference in Paris. I am one step closer to getting the evidence I need to confront Elizabeth. She doesn't know it yet, but she is playing right into my hands. Soon, I will have everything I need to expose her lies and deceit, and when I do, she will have nowhere to hide. I sleep very little, going over security footage and cross-referencing timestamps. When morning comes, I am exhausted, but I have no time to rest. Today is an important day. The Cromwells are hosting their annual summer barbecue, and I've been looking forward to it for weeks. It will be a great opportunity to observe Elizabeth and David in a social setting, and to see if I can catch them in any more lies. I put on a suit and tie, and just as I'm about to leave, Elizabeth calls up to me that she's going to the party early to help Sarah set up. That's perfect. I tell her I'll meet her there later. By the time I arrive, the party is already in full swing. The Cromwells' backyard is crowded with neighbors and friends. I stand near the fire pit with a scotch and watch Elizabeth as she mingles and talks with the guests. Every once in a while she bumps into David. "James, you're alone. Good." Rachel Palmer walks up to me. She is one of Elizabeth's best friends, and I've overheard a lot from her lately. "Rachel, are you having fun?" "Sarah's got quite a turnout, doesn't she?" She points to her empty wine glass. "Could you—" I led her over to the drinks table so that we could still keep an eye on Elizabeth and David without looking awkward. "I feel like you haven't been at these parties much?" Rachel asks as I pour her wine. "Elizabeth said you've been staying at the office a lot. Is that right?" I give her the glass. That's rich coming from her. She raised an eyebrow. "Oh? You don't think it's a strange place to be working overtime?" I noticed her hand tighten slightly around the wine glass. "Is it the Grove?" "That's the one. Elizabeth loves their booth, the one in the back, for her late appointments." She looked over at Elizabeth. "James, she stammers, unsure of what to say next. "Yeah," I add. "She told me she was at the office late on Thursday, but her phone showed her a few blocks away." Rachel's face went pale at the realization. I wouldn't want to." "There's no need to be embarrassed, Rachel. I'm sure Elizabeth has her own reasons for not telling you about particular appointments." Elizabeth caught Rachel's eye from across the yard and waved at her. Rachel waved back, but it looked forced. "I should, go check on Tom," she says. She hurried over to her husband and took out her phone. Soon after, I saw her speaking with 2 other women, all of them holding their phones. "Big crowd, huh?" Sarah Cromwell appears next to me, watching me. "Yeah, Rachel's a little on edge." Sarah took a sip of wine. "People talk around here about things. Like business lunches at the Grove." She looked into my eyes and comprehension dawned on her face. "James, lovely night for a get-together," I interrupted deftly. "Elizabeth looks like she's having a great time." We both looked over at Elizabeth, who was laughing at something David had said, her hand touching his arm. "Or," Sarah replies, "that neighbors are nosy. Or that phones have tracking," I whisper back. Sarah's audible gasp tells me she gets it. "There's a conference coming up, right? In 2 weeks. Elizabeth said she can't make it. She has to work? That's what she told me." I take a sip of my scotch. "But some obligations are more important than others, I suppose." The sun is almost gone now. I see Rachel whispering to other people, and more people are looking at Elizabeth with concern. "I should check in on my wife," I say, putting the empty glass aside. "Make sure she's not mingling too hard." Sarah grabbed my arm. "James, if you need anything—" "Thank you, Sarah, but I have it under control." As I walk among the guests, I hear them go quiet when I pass, only to continue their discussions in a hushed manner when I'm no longer listening. Elizabeth's fake smile is wearing off. "Time to go?" I ask, making my way over to where she stands with David and another couple. "Now?" She looks at her watch, a little frazzled. "But it's early." "Remember? Gotta get up bright and early to work on that conference presentation." He looks away awkwardly. "Sure," Elizabeth says, her smile a little too big. "I'm just gonna say goodbye to everyone, okay?" I see her moving around the party and notice Rachel and her friends begin to inspect the garden's flora and fauna as Elizabeth walks over. On the way home, she was silent. Every so often, I saw her look at her phone, as if getting worried messages from her friends. "Good party," I say as we arrive home. "Yeah, though Rachel was a little weird at the end there. Felt like she was avoiding me." I turned off the engine and everything went dark. Yeah, people do strange things when they find out something that they didn't know. Elizabeth looks at me, confused by the sudden revelation, but I'm already getting out of the car, leaving her with that thought. The seed has been planted. Now, let's see it grow. The drive home is silent, and so is the rest of the evening. I can't sleep, so I stay up all night, watching the first traces of the storm that will soon engulf our lives. At breakfast, we sit next to each other as if nothing has happened, even though we both know the truth. The day after the Cromwells' party, I was sitting at the kitchen table, pretending to read the news on my tablet, while in fact keeping an eye on the online grapevine in the neighborhood. The sun was shining in through the windows, painting a tranquil picture. Elizabeth's phone rang for the 5th time in a row. She glanced at it, her expression tensing slightly, before she turned it off altogether. "You're busy this morning," I say lightly, sipping my coffee. "Yeah, just work," she replies, but her hand is tapping the counter. I got a notification about a new text in the Neighborhood Wives group chat, which Elizabeth had been kicked out of sometime during the night. Rachel had sent a message. "Can't believe we didn't see it sooner. All those late meetings at the Grove." Elizabeth's phone rang again, but she didn't even glance at it this time. "I'm going to pass on my morning jog with the girls today," she says, trying to sound nonchalant. "I have a lot of work to do." I scroll through the messages. Sarah Cromwell posted a picture from last night of Elizabeth and David sitting next to each other by the fire pit in what looks like a romantic embrace. "That's just as well," I say. "Looks like it's going to rain." Her running club had sent out a message saying they were rescheduling everything. Elizabeth's name wasn't on the new list. The doorbell rang, startling Elizabeth and I both. I looked at the camera feed on my tablet and saw it was Lisa Montgomery, standing on our front step with the Monday morning coffees she always brought over. "I'll get it," Elizabeth says, putting her robe in order. I watch them both on my screen in the door, hearing Lisa say that she doesn't have time to come in today. That was a first. "Lisa left in a bit of a hurry," Elizabeth says, walking back into the kitchen with a puzzled expression. Did the running group go all right?" She turned her back on me, fussing with the mugs. You know how it is. Things just got moved around." I got a message from Tom Palmer, Rachel's husband, saying, "Guys, poker night this Friday. Elizabeth's work friend David not invited anymore. Hope you understand." I responded with a quick, "Understood," and glanced over to see Elizabeth looking at her phone again. "I'm going to go into work early," she says, leaving her coffee mug full. Right, big project. She left the house and I watched her leave on the surveillance camera. 3 neighbors looked out the windows as she passed. My notifications pinged throughout the day, as I saw more and more of her friends unfriending her on social media. Meanwhile, the neighborhood forums were filled with passive-aggressive posts about respecting the sanctity of marriage and so on. She came home later that night, her makeup a bit smudged, as if she'd been rubbing her eyes. "Did you have a good day at work?" I ask, looking up from the couch. "Yeah, it was fine." She goes to pour herself a glass of wine. "Oh, Sarah called earlier. Said the spa had to cancel our appointment for this weekend. Something about a scheduling error." I listen and nod, all the while looking at my phone. Sarah's message to the neighborhood group really said, "Couldn't sit next to her for 3 hours after what we learned." "That's a bummer," I say. "But you have book club tomorrow night." Elizabeth is shocked, but I already know that Caroline sent her a message an hour ago saying that the club would take a break to reorganize. I think I'm going to sit this one out. I'm not really in the mood to chat about romance books. In the following days, I can see that Elizabeth's friends are starting to abandon her. They don't call or text her as often anymore, and she stops getting invited to the various social gatherings in the neighborhood. At the Cromwell's next dinner party, to which I was only invited as James Mitchell, I can see the subtle signs of Elizabeth's social exile. The women huddle together and stop talking whenever I approach them. The men give me sympathetic looks, while their wives glare at me with disdain. "James," Sarah says, pulling me aside as we serve dessert, "are you doing okay?" "As okay as I can be," I say, voice slightly heavy, but not too heavy. "We're here for you. Some of us know how to stick by our friends." When we got home, I found Elizabeth in the bedroom, on the phone. "Rachel, what's happening? Just let me know. Why won't anyone—" Her voice trails off. "Rachel, are you there?" I act as if I'm busy with arranging the conference while she calls person after person and only reaches their voicemail, or gets a short response saying they're not available. By the end of the week, she's been rejected by everyone she knows. She gives up trying to contact them. "I don't get it," she mutters one night, more to herself than to me. "Why is everyone being so weird?" I said, looking up from my laptop. "She's probably fine. Maybe she just has a lot going on." At the exact same time, just like everyone else, right after the Cromwell's party? I shrugged and looked back at the screen, seeing more messages about her social life going up in flames. "Well, you know," I say softly. "Stuff happens." She goes to the home office to write to David again, not knowing I'm saving every email, every desperate phone call to him, trying to tell him to do damage control. The weekend passes, and now there's only 1 week left until the conference. She doesn't dare to leave the neighborhood, fearing that her friends will be just as cold to her as the neighbors, but she has yet to understand that this is just the beginning of her downfall. I close the laptop with a sigh. I can hear Elizabeth sobbing from the bedroom. Maybe she's writing to one of her friends to ask them why they're ignoring her. She can write to them all she wants. It won't matter. They are already suspicious of her, and soon she will understand that they're not the only ones. The week passes in a haze. I barely register seeing her until Sunday morning arrives. I prepare the usual brunch, just like I did when I proposed to her 5 years ago. It seems fitting that this is where it will all end. In just a few hours, she will understand that her social life isn't the only thing destroyed. The light of the morning sun shone in from the window of our ensuite bathroom, creating a warm luminescence on my face as I put on my tie. I was a changed man. I had waited for this moment for weeks after uncovering the truth. The manila envelope laid on the counter in front of me, ready to bring everything to a conclusion. I could hear Elizabeth talking to my parents downstairs. "James?" Elizabeth shouts from downstairs. "Your mom wants to know if you like the quiche." "Coming!" I shout back, my heart pounding. I take the envelope in my hand, feeling its heft. Inside is everything I need to prove she's been cheating on me. And not only that, it's everything I need for a divorce. Heading downstairs, I saw she was setting out donuts on a platter. "There you are," my mother says, wrapping her arms around me. "Elizabeth was filling us in on your big conference." "Was she?" I say, looking at Elizabeth. I guess she's really curious about it. She hesitated for a moment before picking up another croissant. Well, it's a really big opportunity for James, even if I can't make it. Sarah looks at me. At least I had told her about it last night. "Too bad you won't be able to see it," Sarah says, sounding like she's trying not to spit on me. "I'm sure you'll have plenty of other things to do." Elizabeth's smile froze for a moment. "Anyone need a refill?" she asks, grabbing the pot. "Actually," I say, ignoring the Stepford Wives bullshit, "we need to talk." He stops what he's doing, as if he can sense the change in my mood. "James!" my mom calls out to me. I put the envelope on the table in front of her, in between her hands and the baked goods. "What is this?" Elizabeth asks, though I can tell by the look on her face she's already pieced it together. "Why don't you open it and find out?" She opened the envelope. "I don't understand," she says, though her eyes tell a different story as she looks at the first page. "Don't you?" I ask, standing over her as she rifles through the papers with growing alarm. "The Grove has great security cameras, Elizabeth, and they post on Instagram a lot." My mom gasps as she realizes what I'm saying. "Elizabeth," she says softly, wounded. This isn't," Elizabeth breaks as she looks to the photos. "James, I'm 3 months worth of evidence," I'm telling her. "Texts, emails, hotel stays. You were very thorough in your client meetings." He stood up, looking over Elizabeth's shoulder at the evidence. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" he asks, love for his son solidifying into hatred. She looked around at my family, seeing that they weren't going to help her. "It's not what it looks like," she tries to say, but the words stick in her throat as she comes to the transcripts from the Cromwell's party. "Doesn't it?" Sarah asks. "Because it looks like you were fucking David and planning to use James's conference as an excuse to spend the weekend with him." Elizabeth's face went pale. "I never meant to get caught," I interject. "Yes, that's becoming pretty evident. And the divorce papers are in the back of the stack, by the way. My lawyer says they're very comprehensive." My mom sits down crying quietly. "We took you in," she says. Elizabeth looked defeated, realizing she had been found out. "James, let's have a conversation," she says. "Alone, like the one you had with David, or Rachel, or Sarah Cromwell." It was like she had been slapped in the face with each name I read. Her tray of muffins was sitting on the counter, abandoned and forlorn. "My signature's on there already," I say, motioning towards the documents. "The offer is more than fair. You might have a tough time explaining those expense reports to your bosses, though." The threat had the desired effect. Elizabeth looked up at me, now appearing genuinely frightened. "You didn't?" "Well, technically they belong to HR now. They wanted to know how you paid for your little office romance with company money." He stands next to me now. "My lawyer will be in touch with your lawyer," I say, fixing my tie one last time. "But I'd recommend you not contest this." She sat down on one of the stools and put the papers on the counter. Where am I supposed to sleep? She asks. I think the Grove has a few rooms available, says Sarah. Maybe ask for a different booth. My mother gets up and goes to get her purse. We should go, she says softly. James? I nodded and walked over to the door. The brunch was forgotten. Consider the house yours until Wednesday, I say, not looking at Elizabeth. I recommend you spend that time getting your stuff together. We left her to clean up the mess. Now what? She asks quietly. In exactly 1 week. So, I say, we wait for David to get his copy of the papers. I hear the Grove has a great afternoon service for serving lawsuits. The sun is still shining brightly, though, as if nothing has happened. I can see our home in the rearview mirror. Elizabeth is standing in the kitchen window, still surrounded by the mess she made. The next couple of days were a blur of phone calls with divorce lawyers and sleepless nights. I stayed with Sarah and didn't return home until Tuesday morning. A thick fog covered our street as I arrived. I sat in my home office, watching Elizabeth pack her things from a distance. I look out the window and see my wife carrying another bag to her car. Hey, do you want a hand with those boxes? I ask from the window, as if he were a customer. The woman jumped, almost dropping her expensive-looking purse. No, I got it, she says weakly. The neighbor is outside picking up her paper, watching Elizabeth pack her car with a look of amusement. I have a feeling she's going to be talking about this for a long while. I can see from my cameras that there are 3 group chats going on right now about Elizabeth leaving. One of them says, the adulteress is on her way out. No surprise there. Elizabeth is carrying another box. It says kitchen on it. She's leaving the wedding china. Your mom's silverware's on the dining room table, I say, still looking out the window. Take it with you. She looked up from where she was sitting. James, come on, can't we just talk? I think our lawyers have said enough. A car drove by at a crawl, and I saw Rachel Palmer looking at our house from the driver's seat. Elizabeth saw her as well, and looked embarrassed as she went back in the house. My phone buzzed with a text from David. You just ruined both our careers. You know that, right? I smiled, thinking about the HR meeting I had scheduled for David the day prior. Hopefully by now he was in the process of being fired. Elizabeth returned with the silver service, nearly dropping it on the ground. I got a call from the community center, I say casually. They're going to need a new fundraising chair. She stopped dead in her tracks. They can't just... Seems like they want someone with unimpeachable moral character to lead them. Their words. A jogger went by on the other side of the street, avoiding our house. Where will you go? I ask, even though I've already heard her say it in her frantic late-night phone calls. My sister's, in Cleveland. Not far enough, but far enough to get away from the murmurs. Her sister had not been pleased when I sent her the photo evidence. More neighbors are peeking out at us, trying not to be seen. Elizabeth is moving faster, more urgently. The moving company is coming tomorrow to pick up the furniture we agreed on, I say. You've tagged what you want, right? She nodded, not looking at me. James, what did they do to us? I lean against the wall, watching her as if I'm studying an animal in a zoo. I think the Grove's security cameras do a pretty good job of explaining that. She looks at me as if I've slapped her in the face. I didn't want to get caught. Yeah, you said that at brunch. I heard a car door slam across the street. The Wilsons were going to church, and their teenage daughter was taking a picture of Elizabeth's move out. The country club called, I say. It sounds like they're taking your name off the membership. They cited some kind of bylaw about member conduct. Elizabeth's makeup was beginning to run. You've stolen everything from me, she says. No, Elizabeth, you gave it to me. One lunch at a time. She returns a moment later with a small photo album, presumably of our wedding, since she still seems to be under the impression that it actually happened. The conference is tomorrow, she whispers. Yeah, I'm guessing David will be replaced, though. Apparently HR takes expense account fraud very seriously. The car is full now, everything we had shared during our 3 years together packed away in stylish bags and suitcases. I did love you, she says, standing outside the driver's side door. At first. I looked at her, standing in the same spot in the driveway I'd seen her that morning before she left to meet David. Farewell, Elizabeth. She gets in her car and backs out of the driveway. I listen in through the neighborhood gossip channels as they discuss this latest development. Elizabeth was gone, and everyone would soon be talking about the brave husband who was helping her get the care she needed. My phone buzzed. A text message from my lawyer, confirming the final divorce papers. Everything was going according to plan. The fog lifted, and I shut down the recording equipment. Heaving a sigh of relief, I watched Elizabeth's car disappear around a corner. Good riddance, I thought. It's different this morning. The water sprinklers are on, and people are going for their morning jogs, but there's a sense of ease that wasn't there before. It feels like the whole neighborhood is breathing more freely, as if a weight has been lifted. I carried the last box out to my car. It was filled with Elizabeth's things, the remaining bits and pieces she left behind. The movers had already picked up the furniture she wanted to take with her. "Lovely day, James," she says, sounding sympathetic enough to keep up appearances. "Great day for a fresh start," I answer, shutting the trunk. I looked at my watch. It was 7:15. That gave me enough time to drop off Elizabeth's belongings at the storage facility on my way to the conference. I was giving a talk about information security and had prepared a special section about how you can make sure that the person you're living with is who they say they are. I stood in my living room, taking in the furniture and decorations that Elizabeth and I had picked out together. It looked a bit different now, after I had removed some of her personal touches. It felt strange to see empty spaces on the walls and shelves where her photos and knickknacks used to be. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Sarah Cromwell. "Just saw her car driving east on the highway. Good riddance." I replied with a simple, "Thank you for everything," and put the phone back in my pocket. The neighborhood watch had been a success. I was glad to have had them on my side. I went to the kitchen and saw Elizabeth's coffee mug in the dishwasher. I took it out and added it to the box with the rest of her things. I felt a sense of relief as I closed the lid and sealed it with tape. It was as if I had finally purged myself of her lies and deceit. I heard a car door slam outside. I looked out the window and saw Rachel Palmer getting out of her car. She glanced at my house, as if she was trying to see if Elizabeth was still there. "Good morning, Rachel," I say, smiling. "Great day for a new beginning." She jumps, surprised to be caught spying on us. "James, how are you doing?" "Fine. I'm sure the Grove's lunch service is a little less busy, though." Rachel looked embarrassed as she retreated back inside to no doubt tell everyone in the neighborhood group chat. My cell phone rang. It was my lawyer. "Everything is in order," he says, as if he's been waiting to say it for a while. "David's dismissal, too. His wife's attorney called us earlier today." "Casualty of war," I say, looking out the window. "But I don't think Elizabeth will mind anymore." "So you aren't canceling the presentation at the conference?" "Some things are important to learn." He laughed. "Just don't do anything illegal or unethical. Forever." I hung up and made one last round around the house. There was a faint smell of Elizabeth's perfume in the closet where we used to sleep, but I opened the window and let it out. The doorbell rang. Sarah was right on time. "Are you good to go?" she asks, entering with a carton of cleaning products. "Almost. The storage unit opens in a bit." She puts down her things and looks at the empty shelves. "It's weird," she says, touching the spot where Elizabeth's family photos used to be. "It feels truthful?" "Yeah." We go about the rest of the cleaning in silence, scrubbing away the last of Elizabeth's presents. "Did you hear about David's wife?" Sarah asks, wiping down the coffee table. "Bleeding him dry?" "That's the word around the office. Apparently, she's good friends with one of the partners." I smiled to myself, thinking about how I had set this up a couple weeks back. Karma works fast. The day goes on, the sun rising in the sky, as we clean up the rooms one by one. "There, all done," Sarah says. "Do you want to sage the place?" "Nah, I think setting up cameras was enough." She embraces me, a real family member. "Go ruin the rest of their lives," she says, stepping away, smiling wide. I put the last of my boxes in my car and replaced them with Sarah's cleaning equipment. It seemed like the entire neighborhood was watching me now. "The lecture is at 2, I say to Sarah. "You can watch it online." "Great, thanks. Elizabeth's sister might watch it too." I sent her the link. I took off my wedding ring and put it in the glove compartment. It felt good to be rid of it. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw my house disappearing behind me. I thought I would feel a pang of sadness looking at it, but instead, I only felt relief. The manager at the storage facility didn't even look at my ID. He just told me to go to Unit 247. I put the boxes inside on a shelf, with the writing facing the back. "Paid up for 6 months, the manager says. "After that, give it away," I say, shutting the unit door. On the drive over, I mentally prepare myself to give my presentation. I'll be talking about digital footprints, surveillance, and how nobody can keep a secret in the modern age. Maybe I'll use Elizabeth as an example. I'll leave out her name, of course. A few text messages pop up on my phone from Sarah Cromwell and Rachel Palmer saying they saw Elizabeth's car on traffic cameras heading east. It looks like the gossip is spreading, and everyone is enjoying the show. I reach the conference center and park my car. As I walk inside, I think about how much fun it will be to teach these IT professionals a lesson about cybersecurity.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.